And we're coming to you live for the Built Ford Tough Studio. Boomer Esiason, Greg Giannotti. It's Boomer and Gio on the Fan. We will be with CBS Sports Network at 8 a.m. We got more USA Women's Field Hockey on CBS Sports Network. You can always find us on the free Odyssey app. Good Thursday morning. It is freezing outside. This is pure January for you in the tri-state area. We're getting more snow tomorrow, but then we get divisional playoff weekend, and the head coach carousel and all of this stuff is still going on. And you get some big news last night as Mike McCarthy will be staying with the Dallas Cowboys. So all the Cowboy fans that were disgusted by that performance against the Packers, wanted Jim Harbaugh, wanted Bill Belichick, wanted Mike Vrabel. Nope, you're not getting any of those guys. Jerry Jones says we are close. We're so damn close. We're so close that we lost by 30 points to a team we were favored 7 points over at home. We're that close. So close. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
Yeah, good morning, G. You know, I was with Coach Cower, Phil, and Nate Burleson last night as we were doing our Paley Center kind of chalk talk for all the people to find out what's going on behind the scenes for the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And this news broke last night. And quite frankly, I got to tell you, I was actually happy to hear it. You know, because I often talk about stability here on this radio show, and the sewer pit of social media can just basically affect everything and everybody if you allow it to. And sometimes these owners have got to step back, take a look at what success they've had with their said coaches, and then realize not to be emotional and not to get caught up in the nonsense and the idiocy that is going on out there. And it also, it's not just social media, it's us guys as well. It's the shows that are on ESPN and Fox Sports 1 where the producers say, who should be the next coach of the Cowboys? Who should be the next quarterback of the Cowboys? Should they get rid of Jerry Jones? Should Jerry Jones sell it? You know, and all these dopey questions that the on-air talent has to answer, and they have to answer it with, hyperbole. And they got to be, this is this team, and they've never won a championship since this year and that year and everything else. And some of us at times, and I'm as guilty as anybody, forget how difficult it is a job of what they're doing. And sometimes you just got to take a step back and you got to say, okay, there's one Super Bowl winner. You never know who that's going to be depending on what kind of shape their teams get into late in the year. And then you sometimes run into a hot team and you end up getting blasted. And maybe your best player has his worst game of the year. And that's exactly what happened with the Cowboys and Dak Prescott. Same thing that happened with the Browns and the Texans. When Joe Flacco threw 2 interceptions for touchdowns. Zach threw an interception for a touchdown, and Darnell Savage read it perfectly and took it back, and the game was basically over at that point, and that's what ends up happening. And you remember yesterday or 2 days ago, I think we were talking about stability or stable franchises. Franchises who have to go through transitions, franchises that sometimes make it to the playoffs or get bounced in the first round of the playoffs, and yet every year they're in the playoffs, and sometimes fans don't think it's good enough. And a prime example of that is the Pittsburgh Steelers and what's going on with Mike Tomlin. Now, Mike Tomlin's coming back for another year. Now, I don't know if they'll give him a contract extension. I'm assuming that the way things work in the NFL, he'll get a contract extension. But if you talk to a diehard Steelers fan, and I did this last night, and I will not mention the person's name.
Bill Cowher.
No, it wasn't Coach. This was something completely different. This Steelers fan was just lamenting the fact that it's okay just to have winning seasons and make it to the playoffs. We haven't won a playoff game. We haven't won a Super Bowl since the last time Mike Tomlin won the Super Bowl. And, maybe things get stale and we got to get rid of this guy and we got to get rid of that guy. And every fan that is passionate, like I am about the Rangers or the Knicks or the Mets, we all think we have the answers, and yet we're not in the building. And then I think about these franchises like Pittsburgh, what the Jets wouldn't give to have a franchise that successful, even just winning regular season games. Forget about the playoffs for a second. Then you think about the 49ers, the Packers, the Bills, the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Steelers, of course, the Rams. I think that teams like the Cowboys and Eagles, and I think the Eagles are now going to keep Nick Sirianni, I think they're trying to stay stable and realize the good things that have actually come out of the seasons that they've played with these coaches leading them. Now, this will be Coach McCarthy's 5th year. And this was Dak Prescott's best year by far as a starting quarterback with him calling the plays. there were 3 quarterbacks that threw for over 30, at least 30 or more touchdowns. The quarterbacks were Jared Goff, Dak Prescott, and Brock Purdy. That's it. Nobody else.
Yeah, and you talk about Mike Tomlin and Mike McCarthy. Their resumes are essentially exactly the same. Exactly the same. And everybody will say from a national standpoint, Mike McCarthy's got to go, and from a national standpoint, Mike Tomlin has to stay, which is interesting. Steeler fans feel differently. But I guess what it is that annoys people is sort of the way the fans of the Cowboys and the Steelers is how close you really are to getting over the hump. And this is the problem I had with the Yankees and the way that they looked at things that year they got swept by the Astros. They kept saying, we made it to the ALCS. We made it to the ALCS. But fine, you did. That's a fact. But you were kicking everybody's ass in the beginning of the season. You fell apart towards the end of the season. You barely got by the Guardians. Then you got swept by the team that always beat you. So you weren't that close. You made it to the ALCS, but you weren't that close. The Pittsburgh Steelers' last 4 playoff games they have played, they have lost. They gave up 45 points to the Jaguars, 48 points to the Cleveland Browns, 42 points to the Kansas City Chiefs, and then 31 points to the Buffalo Bills. They get there, and then they get their face kicked in. And that's what's gone on with the Cowboys.
So I take a look at the Steelers this year. And, Mike Tomlin won 10 games with 3 different quarterbacks who were very average at best. And he also lost his best player and most likely the defensive player of the year in T.J. Watt for the most important game, the Buffalo Bill game, on the road.
Sure.
And they hung in there. I mean, it wasn't like they were inept. I mean, they didn't have a great passing game. One of their wide receivers fumbles the ball. Then the quarterback throws an interception in the end zone where they're driving to score. And I'm like, I understand. I understand the frustrations because I haven't won a cup since 1994, for God's sake. And I want that too. But I also recognize that, how hard it is to do it in these leagues. And if you compare some of these teams that I just gave you on that list, the 49ers, when was the last time they won a Super Bowl? But yet they're a great.
But that's a team is close. They're close. They are legitimately close.
I would also say to you, I'm telling you, the Cowboys are close too. They lost their entire linebacking core except for Micah Parsons, who was playing all over the place, as opposed to one spot. If they would have Leighton Vander Esch on the field, maybe they would have been better and they would have been able to stop Aaron Jones. They're out there with 6 defensive backs because Dan Quinn is saying, I got to put my best players on the field, even though they're small. We're going to get run over by a running back who is now finally healthy again for the Packers. It's, a lot of this is timing. A lot of this is luck. When I take a look at now the Kansas City Chiefs, they're going on the road to the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo is playing with A.J. Klein, who 5 weeks ago was on the couch. He made 11 tackles against the Steelers. Now he's going to be out there against the Kansas City Chiefs. And we forget just how good some of these teams are. And you have a top-flight defense in Kansas City. You have we all still believe that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league. I don't care about what stats show you or anything else. They finally found a wide receiver, Rashee Rice. And, they have a top offensive line. They got Isaiah Pacheco who's going to be the hammer. So, they're catching, I believe. It would be better if they would be playing in Arrowhead, but they're catching the Bills at the right time in terms of the Bills' defense and their injuries.
Sure. Now, you always say when you want to get rid of somebody, what is the replacement? When it comes to Dak Prescott, it's very easy. There is no replacement. You're not going to find anybody better than Dak Prescott. But this particular offseason, I can give you 3 guys right off the bat that I believe are better coaches than Mike McCarthy. And that's why I also think that Dallas Cowboy fans are pissed off. And those 3 guys are Belichick, Carroll, we'll see what he wants to do, and Mike Vrabel. And Jim Harbaugh, by the way, which I don't know if he would go there, but that's another guy. You can throw him in the mix. There's 4 guys that I can confidently say are better coaches than Mike McCarthy, and they're going to stick with him. So that part of the equation where if you're going to get rid of him, who are you going to replace him with? There's championship coaches available that they didn't even go and talk to. So, or maybe they did and we don't know about it. But
maybe the players went in there and told Jerry Jones, "Look, we love playing for this coach." I don't know why.
You always tell me you can't listen to the players, right?
I'm just saying they do have player exit interviews, and you saw what went on in Vegas. You saw how these players are basically saying, "We want Antonio Pierce as our head coach," and you were even saying that, and we all believe that there is something to be said about that. You don't necessarily want to listen to all the players, especially when the players saying, "Bring this guy in here, bring that guy in there," and you know how we learned that. We saw that with Aaron Rodgers. So let the general manager do his job, but they do have exit interviews for a reason. And the reason you have exit interviews is to get the temperature of what's going on in the locker room. Now, what's interesting about that, if I had to go by like what Darius Slay, the defensive back for the Philadelphia Eagles, said yesterday, he said it was like, playing for, within 2 marriages with 2 different defensive coaches. And it completely, according to him, of course, and he's a player, upset whatever rhythm they had on defense. And they never really had a rhythm over the last 6 to 7 weeks, due in large part to injuries for them too, but also not being able to get to the opposing quarterback like they did last year, which made his job a lot easier in the secondary. So, there was player injuries, there's player defections, there's big contracts being paid out, and other players getting left off the roster because they can't afford them. There's a lot of variables that go on in the NFL and just in professional sports in general. And sometimes I read all these different things and I listen to what everybody's out there saying. And like I said, I'm one of these mouthpieces here. But I mean, my God, he's won 36 games in 3 years. Dak Prescott is a second-team All-Pro. You want to bring in one of these other coaches, that's fine. That means you're bringing in a whole nother system, a whole nother person in the ear of the quarterback, who is the most important person in the entire league. And the most important relationship, I believe, G, is not the morning guys, on a particular radio show, which is very important, by the way, and how they get along. But the head coach and the quarterback of a respective NFL football team is the most important relationship in the entire sporting world.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring hockey into this conversation, and that's usually your role, but I'm going to give you an example. Your boy Gerard Gallant, as you like to call him, Elmer Fudd, back-to-back 100-point seasons, goes to a Eastern Conference final his first year. Second year, they run into this Devils team that was really hot. They lost in 7 games to them, and then he got fired. He was gone. I mean, team was playing pretty well, but how close really were they? They get a new coach, and right now, even after a little bit of an up and down type of deal, but they have been kicking everybody's ass, and they could very easily have the most points in the league by the time of the end of the season. So
I would tell you they won't, but I will also say this, that hockey is a completely different sport, a completely different set of circumstances. And again, I go back to the quarterback and the head coach relationship. And when you look at the 8 teams that are left in professional football right now in the finals, in the divisional rounds, and you look at like John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson, is there a better relationship? Oh, maybe it's Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Maybe it's Sean McDermott and Josh Allen. I mean, and then this is where Mike McCarthy really, if there's any leverage that a coach like McCarthy has, is the relationship that he has with his quarterback and the success that quarterback has had. And look at CeeDee Lamb. Look at the numbers that he put up. I mean, I guess if you're a fantasy football player, it's great because maybe they won you your fantasy championship. But I guess for the Dallas Cowboy fans, change is in the offing every year, it seems like. And I happen to be a Dak Prescott fan. People who have never played the position think the guy stinks for some reason.
Well, they don't think he stinks. They think he can't win a big game, which is a different situation.
Eventually, it will happen. They are a good team. They have a good roster. They will continue to build on that roster. They may lose their defensive coordinator, whose defense just got shredded. But then again, you got to remember, Dak Prescott did throw 1 pick six. I mean, like it all goes hand in hand. When I saw it, I was actually kind of relieved because I'm sick and tired of talking about coaches getting fired, and it's just like sooner or later you just got to sit down and take a look at everything that has gone on. I mean, I look at Matt LaFleur up in with the Packers. How many big games that they lost at home with Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback?
Right. Well, of course, yes. I mean, after that one Super Bowl that they won back in the 2010 season, there was a lot of disappointments. Yeah, right. With Aaron Rodgers, though, I'm talking about in Green Bay. There was a lot of disappointments with McCarthy and then with LaFleur after that in the postseason. But not every organization is the same, and this is fueled by the owner because the owner talks all the time. And Jerry Jones got off to such a great start as an owner, built a dynasty, and then since then, they haven't sniffed that type of success in the postseason. Hold on. So when the owner is saying, I got to win, and all that matters to me is a Super Bowl, and I'm going to die soon, the fan base is going, well, hell, If he wants it, then that's what I want. And what are you doing if you're getting your ass kicked in the playoffs if you think that the Super Bowl is the only thing that matters and you're going to die? And you're going to keep everybody? That's nuts.
And here's the thing. That's the big problem. The big problem there is him. Now, they're good. They do a good job of drafting. They do a good job of cultivating and developing players. There's no question about that, Freud. They had a coach, Jason Garrett, who could handle Jerry Jones. Didn't let Jerry Jones really affect him as a coach. And he did a good job.
Yeah.
And then when it finally, got stale and they decided to move on, they bring in Mike McCarthy, who's got to deal with the same crap. That's the crap that you have to deal with. I mean, very rarely do our teams here deal with that crap, or do the coaches deal with that. John Mara talks when he has to talk. Woody Johnson talks when he has to talk. But quite frankly, they're not on the radio every week. And, boasting about the Cowboys and saying dopey things on the radio.
Also answering questions every single week about the coach's future.
And so that's why I'm telling you that not every coach is long for that job, just simply because the ownership is so wacky at times. I mean, could you imagine Bill Belichick going down there and coaching with that guy, giving interviews and everything else on the side?
Bill Parcells did it.
Well, he wanted the money.
Okay, well,
he wanted the money.
But I'm saying, but what's the conversation though? Is the conversation that Bill Belichick couldn't handle that situation, or is it that Bill Belichick just wants to cash a check and he's gonna deal with whatever that comes with it?
I think Bill Belichick wants to control a lot of things that are going on. He doesn't want people on Twitter or X. He doesn't want people out there on Instagram. He doesn't want owners, yapping to reporters. He certainly doesn't want assistant coaches yapping to reporters and leaking outside the building. I mean, Gerard Mayo gave a press conference yesterday, the new head coach of the New England Patriots. He said more in his first press conference ever as the head coach of the Patriots than Bill Belichick did in 24 years.
Well, yeah, of course. But anybody who took that job, you would say that about.
No, I'm saying for 24 years.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, but that's his MO. That's not a surprise. He didn't say anything. Whoever was the next guy was going to say more than Bill Belichick said.
But do you agree with me? He said more in one as opposed to
but that was a lock.
10,000 press conferences that Bill Belichick had given.
Yeah, but that's a lock, though. It didn't matter who the next head coach was. They would say more than Bill Belichick said in 25 years.
It's amazing. Gerard Mayo said, I had to get away from Bill. Bill drafted you. Bill molded you. Bill gave you an opportunity.
He said that?
Yeah, he was joking because he went to, I think, some leadership group or something to kind of understand people and interactions with people and things of that nature. That's a whole nother story for another day. But he kind of said, I had to get away from Bill. Bill did it the right way, and Gerard's going to do it his way. And Gerard's all about giving people titles and knowing what their responsibilities are, as opposed to the blurred lines of what Bill Belichick had going on up there. But those blurred lines only went to 9 Super Bowls and won 6 of them.
That's right.
I mean, so that does work. But even Gerard did say, I was drafted in 2008. Things are completely different in 2024. And he's right. The game has changed significantly. And to me, no coach adapted more quickly than Bill Belichick did to the new game. The problem with him is that he lost the greatest quarterback of all time, and guys like Julian Edelman and Wes Welker and Rob Gronkowski, guys that he drafted or traded for. It's kind of interesting. You think about how all those great offenses that they did have with all those great offensive players, it's a former middle linebacker that now becomes the head coach who replaces him.
That is correct. So we'll see what happens with Nick Sirianni. We'll see where Bill Belichick goes. This is far from over, this offseason of craziness with the coaching. It's Boomer and Gio.